database development here at Oracle. And this Friday morning, or late Friday night if you're in Asia, or Friday afternoon if you're in Europe, we want to really talk about a series of things that we're rolling out this year to actually help you get better database performance as we learn from what we've been doing over the last few years. And so what I'd like to really talk about is what we're putting in place for people to train themselves. But first, I'd like to sort of introduce myself. Just like my boss, I like to get in boats, but really, the RealWorld Performance team is really all about experience with the database, and we've been doing it a long time. And we've come to some conclusions fairly quickly about watching people who have built databases, built applications on them, and either done extremely well in terms of database performance and achieved incredible metrics and performance and availability figures. And of course, there's things on the other end of the spectrum where some systems always seem to be a struggle from start to finish. And what we've noticed is that people don't accidentally get excellent performance. Somebody usually did some engineering work, usually involving numbers and calculations, in terms of figuring out what it would take to get good performance. It's rarely an accident. One of the other things we also notice in terms of the way groups build systems and how they communicate and work together is that most people get the systems they deserve. And this was a statement given to me by one of my mentors earlier in my career, as I was getting immensely frustrated trying to convince somebody to build a system in a different way to the way they were going. And I was running up against political roadblocks and things where people were determined to do the opposite of what was good engineering practices. And I was getting quite frustrated. And fortunately, I had a good mentor at that point in time, and he calmed me down in my younger years and said, you know, actually, Andrew, don't worry about it. People will get the systems they deserve. If they consistently do things wrong, they'll have a problem later. And one of the things that's really the mantra that I sort of enforce within my team, and really is a good philosophy I found for database performance work, is that we really will not tolerate good enough performance. We should always be aspiring for excellence, because what I've learned is what is good enough today is really substandard tomorrow. And so we should always be aspiring for excellence and getting the best efficiency and the best performance out of the hardware-software combination we've got. Too often I find people compromising and going, oh, that's good enough, or I hear statements like, oh, that's good enough to support the business, and things like this. I take very much a more engineering approach to database performance rather than database performance by MBA. We'd rather do it as an engineer and get the best out of the hardware and software together and get them running as best as possible, rather than struggle to a bar defined by nebulous terms that could be re-argued every other week. So it's a case of getting the best out of the equipment and software we have. And it's not a bad idea to aspire for excellence. New engineers in my group, if they ever make the mistake of saying, I think the performance is good enough, kind of knows they've got the weekend working to figure things out to aspire to excellence. And that's kind of our philosophy on performance. Really, what is real-world performance to us is what we call sort of bridging the chasm from today's performance to what is possible. And really, you know, we use the term chasm because very often it's quite a painful and a difficult break to get between today's performance and what is potentially doable. And it very often involves quite a lot of hard work and discomfort. And, you know, it's not always a technical problem. Very often it's an organizational problem. And the challenge for a real-world performance engineer is both technical as well as sort of political, emotional, head game stuff to actually get the work that you've done implemented in production. So the quality of a real-world performance engineer is half technical excellence and then half the ability to get these things rolled into production and make a difference, because we have a huge inertia to change in our systems. And one of the things that drives me crazy is people come to me and say, I've got a performance problem, but you can't change anything. Which my response is, then you will continue to have a performance problem. You have to be able to initiate change, but the skill is initiating the right changes. Okay, so really a lot of the real-world performance stuff that we're going to talk about has come from what we've observed, and a lot of this came out of the changes in the use of the Oracle database as and when Oracle became a hardware company, and we started launching out programs like Exadata and things like that. We came to a very big realization that the database product was not being used to its full potential. And when we actually made innovations to the database to allow higher performance levels, the biggest bottleneck was very often the application code was unable to exploit a lot of this hardware because what we were asking the database to do was run at orders of magnitude faster, but the application code wasn't able to do that. In many cases, the application logic had been written 15, 20 years ago and had been put together with a view to small data sets, serial processing, and hadn't been able to think about parallel processing and the ever-increasing data sets that we work with. And those that work with bigger and bigger data sets will realize that you actually need a different set of algorithms as the data set gets bigger to do the same operation. Now, the challenge I get for Faceback is that people don't want to hear about this, that they're not using the database very well. There's usually a huge amount of emotion and sunk capital in today's investment in applications. And it represents, in many cases, a change of direction if they were to rewrite things or start changing code. But any performance engineer will recognize that usually the application is the source of the problem, and that's the best place to make performance gains. And when I talk about performance gains, we're looking for orders of magnitude gains. We're not looking for 20% increases. We're looking to move the decimal point. And, you know, this is really the challenge that we face on a daily basis, is that recognize that the code was written a long time ago under different hardware and software and even business regimes. And this is one of the biggest challenges that a real-world performance engineer faces, is he finds the bottleneck is in the code. And in many cases in IT organizations, people say, we can't change the code. And really, this is quite ridiculous. You know, most people that I work with have studied exams and they've passed exams in computer science and are fully competent software engineers, but then they're not changing any code. And I always find this a challenge. It's basically you've chosen not to change the code. And in many cases, those applications, their only growth curve is as long as Moore's law keeps going on and as CPU speeds increasing, which they're not. They're not growing at the rate that they were. And so the other thing is that data sets are growing faster than Moore's law. So we do need to make algorithmic changes to our applications to keep up with the data sets that are growing faster than the CPU speeds are getting faster. And one other trend that I've really noticed is that we've kind of reversed the difference between hardware and software. Is we're very good at flipping platforms and moving applications and databases to new hardware. And so this is complete opposite of how it was when I was growing up, where the hardware was fixed and we changed software to make things go faster. Now people seem to change hardware and keep the software static. And with this in mind, I can see that certain classes of application with this mindset will never scale. And this is a big shame because there's a lot of performance to be harnessed out there. And we are talking orders of magnitude performance to be gained. So moving on from here on, RealWorld Performance Group, and we do have a little bit of a reputation for being a bit tough on people. And the reason for that is because we're basically a numeric group and we're fact-based. We've got hundreds of man-years of experience, engineers spread around the world. And really our goal is to see you get better and better performance out of the database. And our methods are remarkably simple, but remarkably threatening at times to some people. We use the product in the manner it was designed to be used. And that may sound very trivial and obvious, but if I actually go to a lot of sites, they're not using the database in the manner it was meant to be used. And this can be from the top level, SQL level, but even down to not even consistent patching and maintaining the environment in a consistent manner. And I ask you, how many people are running on clusters where you actually got different sized Oracle binaries on different nodes of the cluster? This is just telling us that we're not running the product that we were meant to be running. Most of our debugging techniques are pure numerical based and logical debugging techniques. Again, I give engineers a tough time when they say, oh, I think this is happening, and I say, show me it's happening on that side of things. So that's quite a different approach. Our debugging techniques are sort of contrary to a lot of what we see in the world, is where people just gather mountains of trace files and bottom-up statistics and then try and fix the problem. We tend to take a top-down holistic view of the application and see where the choke points are, rather than just trying to look for symptoms, look for diagnostics, and fix the symptoms. We look at a top-down view of where the performance choke points are and then fix them appropriately. We also spend a lot of time on education, and that's what most of what we're talking about today is going to be about, performance methods and techniques. And really our goal is to avoid this, what I call this hack and hope approach to what people call tuning. You'd be surprised to know that my engineers change very little initialization parameters inside the database. We don't set many parameters. If we do, it's usually for debugging purposes, and it's not to be put into production. But there is a culture out there in Oracle of, oh, I've got to fiddle with these underscore parameters, and come on, Andrew, give me some parameters that I can suddenly make my database go fast. No, I'm afraid it's not like that. Good database performance work is just hard work, but it's extremely rewarding because if you put the hard work in, you get performance gains that you can live with for a long time. Okay, so these are the three big mistakes that we see being made philosophically in terms of performance. I told you about incorrect tools and products, and the other one I alluded to earlier is not understanding the big data, little data design challenge. People are very often running big data problems with little data algorithms, and they get huge performance problems. And so one of the things we talk about is, are we solving a big data set problem or a little data set problem? Because the correct solution is very different if you're working with 1 million rows or 10 rows. And, this is really important. One of the simple analogies I use is if you were having to process, load and validate 1 billion rows, would you load 1 billion rows and then validate 1 billion rows? Or would you load 1 row, validate 1 row, and then run it in a tight loop 1 billion times? I'll let you think about that. And the other challenge we also see is that everybody's always looking for a solution, in many cases, before they understand what the problem is. And this is a common trait, is people are looking for hacks and things to hope a problem would go away, but they never really got to the root cause of the problem. Now, I ask you, if you went to the doctor that way and he gave prescriptions just hoping things got better, how would you feel like it as a patient? But I'm sure you wouldn't like it, but we see this in the database space. In many cases, these solutions sound fantastic in meeting rooms, but they're actually not based on any inputs, and it's just a hack and hope. One of my engineers describes a lot of this behavior of confusing activity with progress. Until you understand the problem, you can't solve the problem. And so really one of the challenges I do when training engineers is to get them to articulate the problem before they come up with a solution. And if they can't articulate the problem, there's no way they're changing anything. And that's quite an important part of RealWorld Performance. Okay, so what do RealWorld Performance engineers do in my team? Well, we deal with escalations. We also do some benchmarking and POCs. We do not as much as we used to. But however, watching the POCs basically reinforces everything I see, is that I see a lot of badly written applications being benchmarked. And with relatively simple structural rewrites, there's orders of magnitude more performance to be made. And yet, people seem oblivious to doing this side of things, and it's extremely frustrating. We also test a lot of new code coming out of Oracle and early releases, and we also do a lot of prototyping of new ideas with new code. We haven't really put very much out on 12C at this point in time yet because we're still working with it. We're still getting street smart with the new software, the new techniques. A lot of our stuff is just tried and tested, and it takes a little while before we get savvy and we get happy that we would actually go out and endorse a technique. Everything we come out is road tested. And one of the things that is really important for my team is that they share their skills and mentor others. We're really, really keen on that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mentoring and coaching other people. Now, we have a little bit of education activity. In fact, we do a lot more now than we ever did. And we have 3 levels. We have a real-world performance class. We have a performance day. And what we're going to talk about launching today is a learning library where people can get a lot of the benefits of the other 2 events online in their own time. The real-world performance class is something that's been going on for a number of years. We now do it with partners and customers, and really the key to this event is it's hard work. We hit the 3 big topics of SQL, OLTP, and data warehousing, and we usually leave all the students gasping for air at the end. It's pretty tiring, and it's probably 4 months of training in 4 days. It's given by real-world performance engineers, and it's really designed for architects, developers, and DBAs. And if you're interested in participating, either contact my team or your local Oracle team. It does require quite a bit of setup and an investment by people wanting to do that. And we do look for classes of about 30 to 50 people. But we like to get out in the field on site. We learn as much giving the class as hopefully the people turning up. But really, to be honest, if it was a normal class, you'd probably be at it for months learning the same amount of it. And we do have people coming back for repeats because they didn't get it all first time round. We have some great quotes, and you know, really the training is done mixture of classroom, demos, hands-on examples, and you know, it's geared towards the mistakes that we see people hemorrhaging performance from their systems. The real-world performance day is a lot of fun. Myself, Tom Kite, and Graham, it sort of mixes a bit of theatre and a bit of Hollywood, and for a day, we use big screens and big audiences to talk about real-world performance, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great event to bring along development teams or DBA teams or your architects to just basically, in a more sociable and fun environment, learn about database performance. This is what we do. If you're interested in attending those, please organize with your local user group and directly with us. We do look for 200 plus delegates and sort of theater-style facilities to do this. And believe it or not, we have 2 events actually taking place next week in London and in Riga in Latvia. And we're looking for bookings towards the end of this year and early next year, such that we can get all the presenters organized. And we've done a number of these in Europe, which have been fantastically organized and well attended. And it's you know, been a lot of fun doing it that way. What we're talking about today is, however, is taking all the demos and a lot of the exercises that we embed into the training, the real-world performance day, and record them for your reference such that you can view them through the online learning library. And you can use them to study, you can send them to your boss, you can send the links to your boss's boss or your boss's boss or the chief architect. And really what we want to do is give you the information to win arguments such that you can actually increase the performance of your system by orders of magnitude. In many cases, people need proof points, they need clarity, and they need to learn more about it. So hopefully, by actually putting all this information out in a more sort of scalable environment where people can download and view it in their own time, they can actually start using them and using them as tools to architect better systems. That's the front page, and at this point, you know, that's our start point. And the demos we're putting out to start with are really remakes of old demos that we made in character mode, talking about connections, parsing SQL, sending SQL to the database, and the developer mistakes that get made that can actually yield orders of magnitude performance problems. Also, we touch on security issues. And really, we feel this should be mandatory viewing before even starting to architect a system or writing code. And future videos that we'll be rolling out through the next few months and weeks include things involving classic developer bugs that can cause massive performance problems and escalations, the challenges associated with middleware, and set-based programming techniques. This is classic big data set problems. And we bake off in those cases single row processing techniques versus set-based techniques, and we run them as races. So those will be coming later this summer as we roll those out. Okay, so our end game is to help you basically increase the quality of your database usage and realize the potential of your database and hardware. Get to use the products in the manner they were meant to be used. And we recognize that it's not always easy. We are working segmented data organizations that we very often have to spend a lot of time arguing with people to make changes. So hopefully we've given you some data and some backup. And really what I'd like to see is change performance techniques from this last-minute tuning and fiddling approach and hack and hope mentality to that of a more professional engineered system. I certainly wouldn't want to fly on an aeroplane that had been last-minute tweaked and fiddled around with. I'd hope that it was engineered to fly at good speed from the beginning. Our belief that performance is not an accident, it remains the same. It's not something you retrofit in the end. And at that point, I think we want to turn some over to the question. We're also going to talk about collecting some stories. We're looking to collect stories for people who have applied real-world performance techniques. So we're going to challenge you. Can you actually document the performance prior to improvement? Can you document and articulate what was wrong? Could you articulate your solution and predict the performance gains? And then could you tell us that story? So again, over the summer, we're going to actually try and collect some of these. Some people might call them war stories, but I have to say basically case studies of really good performance engineering. And we're looking to sort of find and promote the best real-world performance story in the real world. And we'll hear a little bit more about that later this summer as these events roll through. And at that point in time, I think we would be open to questions. It seems very quiet on the chat out there. I haven't seen many questions. It's very quiet. I've covered the material that we're launching through the summer. I just hope everybody out there is enthusiastic as much as we are to get to receive the material, use the material, and I just wish everyone the best of luck. Just raising their performance gain and getting more and more performance out of the database, and raising the level of professionalism and communication on performance issues. Such that it's not a random process anymore. It's an engineering discipline. I just got a message from one delegate said they had been joining instructions. So hopefully this message has been recorded nicely, and hope everybody enjoys watching the videos.